Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Sunday Musicians Café. I'm Pietro, an Italian violinist and founder of this podcast. Today I'm extremely happy to present to you our new collaboration with the Creative Careers Centre of the Royal College of Music, a department fully committed to and dedicated to young enterprising students, offering services and opportunities for career development and I believe the training for future entrepreneurs within the classical music world. One of the professional development schemes the department offers to you is the RCM Accelerator, a very prestigious grant that helps you to support your creative projects. Today, I'm going to interview two very interesting people, Ellen Kuby and Liam Dougherty, both of them winners of the grant that has enabled them to support the creative projects. Before we go for the interviews, I would like to extend my gratitude to Diana Roberts, the head of the department. Thank you, Diana, for doing this. Without you, anything of this would be possible. Thank you so much. I'm here with Liam Dougherty, composer, graduate from Royal College as well.
That's right.
And he will tell us about a very exciting and interesting project he's working on. And you benefited by the grant of Royal College Accelerate. How do you feel today? All good?
Great, yeah, happy to be here.
He's having just water, you see. He's a very healthy guy.
Yeah, bad cafe guest.
I'm having my second espresso.
That came much earlier in the day, so
Exactly.
Couldn't
Tell us about your background, where you're from. How did you came with this idea of the constructive pianos?
Yeah, so I guess the speed run through my highlights, I suppose, is that I'm a pretty late bloomer, I guess, when it comes to music, especially sort of classical Western art music. I grew up as a guitar player in the Western United States in Colorado. Never overcame an absolutely terrible stage fright, so figured out that I could just write music for other people to play and I would never have to worry about it. So I studied to be an art historian when I first went to university and kind of stumbled my way into 20th century music that way and kind of fell in love and decided that that was what I wanted to dedicate all my time to, and came here a short while later. And
this is nice.
Yeah.
Which is the compositions you are most proud of? Difficult questions. I already started difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely someone who I grow tired of work very quickly.
Okay.
Sometimes even while I'm still writing the current one, I'm kind of on to the next idea already. So I think I'm sort of at that point in my working process where, yeah, I get a little stir crazy with something, and I don't like to sit with it too long. I feel quite a separation from one project to the next project, I think.
And this is very creative based, you know. I think every very creative person, people are like this. They like to change. They like the change. You like the change in your life?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm very comfortable with kind of bold reinventions of things, I suppose.
This is nice. Talking about bold inventions, I mean, you're about to present a new project at this festival called Extremes in November.
Yes.
Tell us about this.
Yeah, so a composition teacher I had when I was studying here, named Catherine Kantz, she's a Luxembourgish composer, really fantastic, really interesting composer, and she taught me in my final year. And she's been named the artistic director of this festival it's called the Rainy Days Festival. That's associated with the Luxembourg Philharmonic, and it's kind of one of the sort of preeminent sort of new and contemporary music festivals in Western Europe, I would say. So has this artistic director position for a handful of years, and each year has a different theme sort of characterizing the festival. So this year's festival is themed as Extremes.
Okay. It's the theme.
Yes, that's the theme for the festival, which is really sort of suits what my interests are. So an extreme new music festival.
Tell us what you're doing, because it's actually extreme.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have a very sort of specific notion of what extreme contemporary music looks like by itself.
We can take it.
But it really does kind of have a whole range of options, from sort of, early post-war avant-garde stuff to even kind of more tame and maybe less confrontational new works, but that are written by young composers working today. So, I think I would like to say that my work probably exists somewhere between that. But yes, I'm really happy to be presenting a new work at this festival.
So what you do basically is to take pianos, not too expensive pianos, I believe, no?
I don't think it's been too expensive up to this point.
For what you do on them, sometimes you feel like maybe they wouldn't allow you, I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
How can you actually talk about it with the owners of pianos and stuff? You rent the piano? What do you do?
So up to this point, whenever I take a piano that I ultimately decide to take apart, I usually find them from some sort of kind of free cycle website.
That's nice.
It's actually quite shocking in a big metropolitan area how many people are just, they have things that kind of take up space in their house and they want to get rid of it.
Like a brand new piano sometimes.
It's, this is my great aunt's piano that I've had for 70 years and I want to get a new sectional instead of having this in my living room.
It's like it's very sustainable project.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got 3 of them now, so I don't know how much use I get out of each one beyond the initial project, just because they're kind of geographically isolated. Every single time I have to do it in a new place, I can't exactly bring the piano with me. But yes, I do try to use something that I think would otherwise not be used.
And this is great. I like it very much. So in practical sense, you take the piano, you basically deconstruct it. What do you do? I mean, you take some parts out, yeah?
Yeah, so I'm predominantly an electronic musician, I would say. So my initial approach was to kind of modify the piano to be some sort of electroacoustic instrument, I suppose. So my approach was to think of the piano, in this case, more of as an amplifier, which is what it essentially is designed to do underneath the keys and the keyboard. So I take all the hammers, the keys, keybed, action, I take everything off, all the kind of unnecessary panels that are on top of the instrument, so that I'm just left with frame, soundboard, strings. And then I essentially modify the soundboard with these kind of vibrating speakers that convert whatever audio is sent into them into sort of physical vibration.
So in a way, you're transforming an instrument which wouldn't be producing any sound by himself.
Yes.
But you're making the instrument the soloist.
Yes, that's definitely.
That's very nice. I like it. I mean, in a way, I mean, sometimes when we think of pianos, I mean, like the beautiful one we have here behind, I mean, you obviously think that the strings, right, or the mechanic behind it is the most important part.
Yep.
But you are actually saying that the actual box is the amplifier.
Definitely.
So the important part is the whole structure of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really striking, obviously, to look at those mechanisms like you're talking about. But I think what really moved me the most the first time I saw it was just how kind of simple at its kind of foundation the sort of device is. And so my interest was in kind of making something around that sort of simple foundation, as opposed to the kind of complexity that has evolved with the history of the piano over the last 250 years.
This is nice. I mean, it makes me think that for sure there are pianists which would kill you for what you do. Have you ever encountered some?
Generally speaking, I get some eyebrow raises from people who have to take care of very pristine instruments. But I have been very fortunate to have some nice collaborators, including very gifted pianists who share this sort of enthusiasm for experimentation.
This is nice. This is nice to have the support of your colleagues as well.
Absolutely.
Pianists themselves. I mean, what's the emotional? I mean, I'm very interested in the creative process of this, because I mean, as a composer, you obviously think about the music and the sound that comes out of it. I mean, you're not just doing like an installation. It's not an art installation. I mean, it could become.
Yeah, it has been in the past. Yeah,
exactly. But you're focusing on the music that comes from it. So, what's the creative process that you had behind this? I mean, you thought, okay, I'm trying to find new sounds. I'm trying to find a new way of communicating an emotion or something. How did it work?
I guess a lot of times my sort of perspective when I'm kind of working on a new project is I like to make things do things that they're not supposed to do and sort of see if that produces an interesting result. So I guess in the context of this piano, it's, what if I make the piano sound a way that the piano is not supposed to sound? Or even what if I use the sort of modifications that I've put onto the piano incorrectly, so to speak, to make it do something it's not supposed to?
Yeah, that makes sense, but already someone would tell you, like for example, I mean, there are already prepared pianos, in classical music, in contemporary music. You can actually, this idea of trying to make the piano sound differently with some papers maybe on the strings, but your idea is, it looks like you are very much modifying the idea of the piano itself. So were you looking at that just as a practical thing to do, or it came from how would you say, like a musical idea?
Sure, yeah. I mean,
you see what I mean?
I do. I mean, I think in one sense as much as the piano is sort of the focal point, like visually, just as much consideration is afforded to the things that modify the piano. So in some sense, the piano is really an augmentation of what those sort of technical components do, right? Like the piano kind of mediates the sound that is possible through the electronics. But when you see it, your experience of it is that the piano itself is doing the thing. Whereas I've kind of conceptualized it as I've just built a kind of weird speaker, basically, that looks like a piano, kind of sounds like a piano, but it can be any sound.
And I was thinking, like, it's obviously connected with cables to your computer.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So you're always there. You're always there when the thing happens.
Yeah, I've tried, at various points when I've done it in the past, I've tried to kind of realize it sort of automated. So that there's a kind of a process that just runs and I just kind of have to shepherd it every so often. But it can be, anytime working with sort of live electronic components, there's always a volatility that is unpredictable and
Are you teaching this to someone to do it by themselves? Or
I haven't.
Are you planning to do it?
No, I don't think I would. I guess if somebody wanted to, I'd be happy to show them, but...
You would like to keep the ownership of it, kind of?
It's not even so much that. I think it's just, it's a quite idiosyncratic process that I think someone would have to be really interested in how to recreate exactly that in order to achieve that. But I've definitely shared my approach with other people and told them to try it out.
I ask you these questions because obviously, in this podcast, I always ask, I try to, the old podcast came from the idea of trying to answer that annoying question: how do musicians make a living?
I wish I knew.
I'm sure
I wish I knew.
You received this many times, and I received it many times too. But and I'm convinced that to answer to that question, we don't have just to make a list of things that we can do. Yes, we have to explain how actually entrepreneurial musicians are. So we look at musicians in a different way, not just as players or performers or composers. Yeah?
Sure.
So, but you are like building skills, learning an instrument or learning how to write music. You're building skills that make you an entrepreneur. Yes, this is my conviction. I think also Creative Careers Centre is a good department for that. They are trying to push that, and I believe they are right. So I always ask these questions about how do you actually make this idea or your project. How do you transform it in a business, right? And I was asking that question because as a composer, normally your tendency is to write things that other people would and sell it, and people play it.
Yep.
Yeah. But in this case, I look at it more as your own invention.
Yeah, sure.
So in a way, you are also the performer of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so.
It is true, right? Okay. So, but I was interested in maybe you have an idea of maybe expand this and to make it accessible.
Yeah, I think generally my perspective on these sorts of projects has been maybe less of a sort of musical work and more. I think of it maybe more in terms of the way that like an artwork would work. That this is it's something that's obviously extremely difficult to replicate. It takes a lot of resources, and it takes me being present to be able to install it. So essentially, scaling it up takes a considerable new amount of resources, which is exciting and always something that I'm interested in doing. But it takes a very sort of special kind of funding consideration and logistics consideration to be able to do that. So I think it's more so. It's not necessarily about always making the project bigger, if I'm being practical, and more so what can I kind of take from it and then maybe that's like make a sample library out of it or release a piece of recorded music that's kind of based off of what I've done with the instrument, if that doesn't necessarily entail, sticking it in a space and having a performance with it, so to speak.
Would you say you're not aiming to make it bigger but better?
I definitely have a fantasy of having like 20 of these pianos in a room, but I'm also reasonable and realistic. So
this is very good, obviously. How the RCM Accelerate grant helped you in a way?
That really was my kind of my first instance of I have this proof of concept that I'd like to sort of scale up and present in a new light, because up to now I'd always presented the work as sort of a sound art thing in a gallery space.
I saw you did it in the RCM
I did,
museum.
yes, yeah.
That's super cool.
I did that as also part of, the RCM's, their Great Exhibitionist Series, so it was nice to kind of have some continuity with the history of the development of the project.
I played in that series when I was I still a violinist, why I say this? When I was a student at college, when I was doing master in violin performance, and I played in the series. It's very nice series.
It's great, yeah, there's a lot of freedom.
I love supporting young composers, like new generation composers. I love working with them. I work with another Italian composers that we are officially, like, I'm the official violinist that collaborates with him, and he wrote a concerto and stuff. And it's amazing to work, on music, completely changes the perspective on how you look at music and how you perform it. It becomes totally a language. It becomes totally something that you have to translate, yeah? And there is no tradition of that piece played.
Yes,
so you
definitely.
really have to look at it how this makes sense or not,
Yeah, I find that very exciting.
It's very exciting. I love that. Yeah, but your project, there is no violin, Liam. What should I do?
Yeah, I guess, well, I've tried to kind of meet somewhere in the middle and sort of realize this maybe in a more explicitly musical context. There's everything happening at the piano, but there's a score, and the musicians have parts, and sometimes it's a weird score and weird stuff in the parts, but nonetheless there is a musical consideration, I think.
True. Do you think the piano is the only instrument you can fit with this project, or we can?
No, actually,
we can deconstruct a violin.
I don't know if I necessarily do it so much with the same degree of deconstruction, but I do it with percussion instruments a lot. Okay. I find it works really nicely.
Which ones?
Any sort of drum. I use the same kind of modification with gongs and cymbals.
Okay.
Obviously, nothing to take apart there really, but that same kind of the same sort of treatment I do on the piano, I can do to those instruments and get really exciting results as well.
Do you build yourself the mechanical parts? The electronical parts?
I don't know. It's it's all stuff that's out of the box that I just sort of assemble in a particular way.
Okay.
And I have to sort of design the software considerations and everything.
I think in your email, when you told me about the project, you mentioned I was very curious because I never heard about it. You mentioned brown noises and white noises. I know what white noises are, and I use them I think in the phone there is like possible to just put white noise generator background. Yeah. And sometimes they help me, sometimes they don't, like focusing, studying or something, yeah? So I know some people use it for sleeping, yeah? Yeah. What is brown noises?
So essentially there's various shades of noise that essentially just kind of correspond to a variety of factors, like different kind of ranges of the frequency spectrum. So, brown noise generally refers to like lower frequencies. It's that sound of, like your washing machine running in the background sort of thing.
I would call that white noise as well, but actually is...
Sure, yeah. I guess if you're being pedantic, I guess you could be I think for most people that probably gets the job done, but if you're spending 20 minutes at a time listening to noise, the colors come into play at some point.
So you would describe your installations as a noise producer, or...
No. Yeah, I definitely, I am interested in the sort of tradition, so to speak, of noise music.
Okay.
And various composers, artists, people's kind of writings on that and different approaches to what using noise in music looks like, or not in music. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty sort of important consideration with how I've approached this project.
Because most of the time, the common thought is that musicians, they hate noise.
Yes, I have encountered that perspective.
It's not true.
I don't think so, yeah.
No, me neither. On the violin there is a technique called on ponticello, on the bridge. And you basically are doing distortion of the sound, what an electrical guitar would do as well. And so that's basically noise, no? And it's such a good effect. And why you think as musicians sometimes we kind of step back from noise?
I suppose there's a lot there, but I do think to an extent, there's a kind of history of aesthetic expectations of what you should hear in a piece of music and what isn't kind of isn't welcome necessarily, or even things that you try to mitigate. You know, as a violinist, for example, I'm sure there's, you know, plenty of time and consideration in your own practice afforded to making as pure and beautiful of a sound as possible. So it can be, you know, problematic for people to think about inverting that, and I totally understand why that is. That's just not the space that I'm as concerned with, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I mean, but we have to break these traditions, no? What do you think? You're someone that you look like someone that would promote change in the music industry.
I guess I try not to think of it that way, because while I'm very like aware of what my kind of interests are relative to, you know, in a place like this, a lot of the students around me, you know, my relationship to music has developed in a really specific way, the same way a lot of other people's has. So what stuff I grew up on, so to speak, in terms of being, you know, avant-garde, post-war experimental music, I have a very different sort of framework and perspective of what those kind of changes and traditions ought to look like. And in some instances, I think some of the things I'm doing are not that striking or shocking when you put it in that context. But then if you put it next to one of those, I can imagine that it looks quite radical.
We need people like you, I think, in the music industry. We do, because the market is saturated of players that are incredibly well prepared, but completely not interesting. And unfortunately, because obviously, unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not, but the music industry is more and more related to money.
Okay.
And the market is sometimes it decides for us. We can't really play all the time the same things. We have to also, which is good, I think honestly is good, and also promote new music from underrepresented composers. College is doing such a good job on this. You always have in the programs during the year, in the orchestras, you always have pieces that are underrepresented, from composers that are underrepresented, or women composers, and it's very good. But you think you're you already installed your thing in Royal College of Music in the museum, yeah? How was that experience? Was it good? Was your first time?
Yeah, that was the first time. I definitely look back on it and think, there was
regret?
No, definitely not. There was, kinks that needed to be ironed out that I think have been ironed out since then. But I think it's easy to get caught up in a sort of public presentation in a space like this as being needs to be very kind of final and very polished. But at the same time, I was a student, and it's me trying something I've never done before, and that you of course want to do that at a high level. But I think I always try to retain some sense of it's okay if it goes wrong or isn't as perfect.
Also,
as
I think
like
it's very innovative, so there is no such thing as wrong or bad. Maybe
that's a good point.
There is for you worse and better, which is a better way to look at it. I think, but I wouldn't go wrong. Your project, that's a very solid, and and also to invest on it, I think is good.
Yeah, definitely. I saw that there was a lot of room for development with that.
There is
definitely.
And so the next big step is for November. Yeah.
Yep.
Tell us once more, when is it? Precisely?
Yeah, so it'll be it's the last kind of weekend in November. Okay. I think the actual date of the performance is the 24th, if I have that right. At the Grand Concert Hall in Luxembourg City, which is really beautiful and is sort of similarly kind of funny place to be presenting this sort of work. But I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really great. So yeah, right now it's just finish writing the piece and get it all ready.
How long is the piece, more or less?
It's about 25 minutes.
Okay, it's not that long.
Yeah, and we've got it together on a nice program with the Ligeti Piano Concerto and two sort of small works written by Catherine Kantz.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of that program.
This is fantastic. Somehow I was thinking that I was linking it more to performing arts, right? Like Marina Abramovic or something. Yeah.
Sure.
So in a way, I was thinking this is going to last like 20 hours. Or
no, this instance is a very focused and concentrated thing that is supposed to kind of happen within the context of this Ligeti performance.
Which is the emotion you would like the audience to come out with? Multiple, I guess.
Yeah. It's hard to say, because I think if I'm being honest, that's not really a consideration that
Nice.
I always have. I guess, I mean, I expect to some degree a kind of, a new music audience. So there is, like, sort of like I was talking about in my own listening, I think there's a greater tolerance maybe for something that might be more shocking or disruptive in other presentations. I just hope that people come out of it thinking, I've never heard anything like that before, because I know that that's what I sort of am most happy to take away from performances of new music, or any music really, when I feel really sort of energized when I come out of a concert and think I had no idea that music could be like that. And
like shocked in a positive way.
yeah, or just kind of, some sort of inarticulable space that you need to spend time reflecting on, I think is a successful
This is a good way of looking at it. I wish you all the best, and I hope to see it live one day. I don't know if I would be able to come to Luxembourg, but as soon as college allows you to do it again,
I'm sure there will be a trail of piano carcasses to follow.
Exactly,
I'm sure.
Exactly. So in this podcast, at the end of the chat, I always ask something that it could be personal, or you can give the cut you would like to.
Sure.
But it's a question that I'm really fond of, which is, what would you say to your younger self? Think about it.
Sure.
Take your time.
No, I think I'd probably tell myself to just do the thing that you're worried about doing, and do it a little sooner than you think you should. There's definitely times where you wait for like the perfect opportunity to do something, or think that you're not quite ready, not quite there yet. And that doesn't mean sort of put yourself out there when you feel ill-equipped or ill-prepared, but maybe just swing a little easier, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liam.
Thank you.
This was a wonderful chat.
I appreciate it.
I really hope to see your work soon. And please follow him. When this episode will come out, most probably you will have a website. We
Yes.
hope so. Yeah?
Yes.
So we'll put the link there, and please go and see his work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.